The difference between people who have a hard time manifesting money and those who do it easily is based on their ability to move in the silence. So silence doesn't mean absence of movement. It is the absence of resistance. The absence of resistance. Florence Scovel Shinn said one time, "Nothing on earth can resist an absolutely non-resistant person. Nothing on earth can resist an absolutely non-resistant person." Now, Neville Goddard would say in the end of pretty much all of his lectures, "Now let us go into the silence." So how can we relate these two together? Well, in the silence, there's no such thing as a person in mind that can resist the flow of money. There's no such thing. See, this person in mind is what the Bible calls the old man. And you are not the old man. Clearly, the old man does not exist. This person in mind does not exist in the silence. You are what is called the new man, or I like to say it this way, the real self. The real self which radiates forth unconditionally is unconditional love. Now, the person in mind, the old man, may suggest that money is evil. Why would the old man suggest that money is evil? Well, perhaps through conditioning, if the individual is identified to the old man and the old man conditioning, they look at 1 Timothy 6:10 and don't read it accurately. Based on that conditioning, through the lens of that conditioning, it looks like it says money is the root of all kinds of evil. Now, if the individual takes a moment to go into the silence, dissolve or no longer identify with the old man or that resistant person in mind, and then read 1 Timothy 6:10, they will see clearly that it says, "For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil." For the love of money. What does that mean? You are the love, and everything is in perfect harmony with you. So money is not your master. Money is utilized to exchange products and services for compensation. A non-resistant person, as she said, knows this, or more specifically, the real self knows this. Through the lens of conditioning, if the individual identifies with the old man, it appears like money is the master. Money is not the master. You are the master. Now, I want to relate this over to this wonderful lecture by Neville Goddard called "Love Endureth." He says, "We are told, 'He who has not loved does not know God, for God is love.'" This is not a conclusion that the prophet reached after years of philosophic study, but an act of God in self-realization. He says, if God never revealed himself to man, I doubt that man would ever know that God is love. But in spite of all the horror of the world, I know from experience that God is love. So what he's getting at is the identification to programming or conditioning, which is what the old man does, and you are not the old man, generates all kinds of behaviors in order to get money, which is not based on love. By that it is meant the individual might think that they have to trick, they have to deceive in order to get the money, and that's based on conditioning. Now, really thinking for yourself. So money is not a master. Money is just part of the play of God. If the individual identifies with conditioning, then they force themselves, they think they have to do all these things in order to get money, which generates the suffering or the horrors of the world, as he said. So what does this have to do with being in the silence or being the non-resistant individual, which is not the resistant person. So we could live this way like Florence Scovel Shinn is talking about. Nothing on earth can resist an absolutely non-resistant person. So that what happens then is you can have your business or whatever kind of way that you generate money, a flow-based way rather than stress, frustration, or doing all these kinds of things based on conditioning, which just generates this kind of distortion of reality. Literally, the old man conditioning distorts 1 Timothy 6:10. And through that distortion, it's interesting how much the conditioning can distort reality. It looks like it says that money is the root of all evil, but it's missing that part for whatever the reason. It's distorted through that conditioning. An individual really thinking for themselves sees that it says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. And as you are love, you know that money is just the way it is. What I mean by that is it's literally a medium of exchange. And so the person identified with conditioning has this emotional charge surrounding the word money. Or they look at, for example, a finance spreadsheet or whatever, and there's this emotional charge. They're resisting it. So again, no shame, no condemnation. Just don't identify with the old man. Florence Scovel Shinn also said, people think by running away from, let's call it, seeming negative situation, they will be rid of it. But the same situation confronts them wherever they go. So the individual genuinely desires to have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. That's the Robert Millikan auto-suggestion that Neville Goddard had provided. I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. I love that auto-suggestion, so much so that I made that the premise of my mastermind, Flow-Based Prosperity. It's a group coaching and mastermind service. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it. People think by running away from seeming negative situation, which maybe it's money. The topic of money comes up, or let's look at the numbers. They run away from it. Rather than dropping the old man conditioning and seeing it for what it really is, which is just a key performance indicator metric, they look at that and see it as a problem. Now, let's say as an entrepreneur, you're looking at the numbers, and every time you look at the numbers, you think you have a problem. You forget that God is the supply. In the moment, the person thinks, oh, this is evil, or there's a problem here. In that moment, if you dissolve that conditioning by not identifying with the old man, in the moment, just don't identify with that conditioning. Just drop it in the moment. What happens is not only will you see things as they are, you won't see whatever number is there on the spreadsheet or on the screen or whatever as a problem. You will literally see it as an opportunity. For example, when I have seen numbers drop in my business, it's not like every single month the numbers go up. I have seen the numbers go up and down and up and down, and overall, over the course, it went up. And then you take that money that you make from your business, whatever it is, and you invest it, and your investments may go up and down. I mean, really look at it for how it really is. Look at the S&P 500, for example. It goes up and down and up and down and up and down, but overall, it's going up. Now, the old man may start worrying about all kinds of things, and you are not the old man. But the old man, if identified with, it really feels real. The old man identification, it really feels real. But it's not real. Because in the silence, we know the old man is not real. So an individual identified with this resistant person, the old man, thinks, oh, but what if over the course the S&P 500 goes down? The answers will emerge as they emerge along the way, whether you reallocate the resources. I'll give an example. Earlier this year, there was a dip when the tariffs were announced in Canada. There was a dip. And prior to the dip, what happened was I got interested in buying a property. So in order to buy that property, what I did was I took money out of some investments and then allocated that funds to the house. Some way, somehow, I just knew in the moment, okay, it's time to buy this property. And then what happened was I sold a bunch of shares. The market drops just like that right after. I reallocated the money into buying the property, and the property value has gone up. And actually, I bought the property when the property value had went down because there was a lot of uncertainty around that time. And the buyers were motivated to sell. Now, I actually ended up, interestingly, buying the property that I used to stay in a while back in an Airbnb. How interesting. And a while back, I remember asking him, would he ever sell the place? And I didn't hear back from him. And then around that time, I searched for a property and then I ended up buying it. And also what's cool was the real estate agent that did the deal is a member of Flow-Based Prosperity. Shout out to Zor. So we see all these things happen naturally if we don't identify with the old man and the old man conditioning that suggests that money is the root of all kinds of evil. Money is neutral fundamentally. It's the individual that can assign meaning to it. Now, what I recommend is dissolving this conditioning, resolving the conditioning when the opportunity presents itself. So where can an opportunity present itself to dissolve the conditioning? Well, perhaps it's looking at the numbers or anything in relation to money. Sales, prospecting, marketing, conversations with family around money, friends surrounding money, anything to do with money. Dissolve the conditioning if the conditioning is there, if you would like to no longer generate the illusion which is generated by identification to the old man, generate the illusion of being a slave to money. You are not a slave to money. That's an illusion. You are not actually afraid of money. You are not afraid of looking at your bank account. You're not actually afraid. You are prior to, in the silence, beyond these kinds of identification. You see things as they are. And as you see things as they are, pure observer, clarity emerges in your mind as to what moves you can make. Another example is I have noticed that sometimes the market fluctuates and I'll look and the investment has gone down, whatever. And that might even be what one person might consider as considerably it went down, or it went down a lot. That's relative, because who suggests this is a lot and this is a little? I see it for what it is, and then I may get an insight. Okay, it's time to move this position. Sell, buy this other shares, market goes up, etc. All these kinds of things. So rather than running away from looking at numbers, from looking at money, which the person in mind, which is the old man, which is not you, labels as negative situation, she suggests by being undisturbed by a situation, it will fall away on its own weight. This is what she calls indifference. Now, in this context specifically, context is very important. In this context, indifference is meant does not move me, unswayed by appearance. It does not mean that I don't enjoy doing my business. It means none of these things move me. Like she says here, none of these things move me. None of these things disturb me. We might say in modern language, when you can no longer be disturbed, all disturbance will disappear from the external. It is a fact. It's true. Because the disturbance is what I call interference patterns, which is generated by conditioning in mind that distorts reality. Interference patterns generated by conditioning in mind that distorts reality. So just as the interference patterns are generated by conditioning in mind that distorts reality, in the context of relationships, for example, fight, flight, freeze, fawn response, which is identification to conditioning, and relationships with people, environment, circumstance, information. The identification with conditioning can distort reality in many ways. One of the ways is, again, an individual looks at 1 Timothy 6:10, and if they're identified with the old man and look through the lens of old man conditioning, it seems like it says money is the root of all kinds of evil. Yet, if the individual dissolves identification to the old man, then they realize that they are the pure observer of whatever's emerging, whatever's appearing, and without the conditioning that is generating the interference patterns that distort reality. And by that is meant the eye moving in particular directions. It's interesting. We used to teach this back in the days with speed reading workshops, how your eyes move to particular parts of the page to read information faster, comprehend it better, retain the information longer. It's very deep and we used to teach essentially be in flow, or we used to more specifically facilitate the flow experience, and they would read faster. That was one of the components. Yet, in relation to this context here of money, if the individual does not look at 1 Timothy 6:10 through the lens of the conditioning, they'll see clearly it says, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. And they'll be able to put two and two together and say, okay, if I was identified with the old man and the old man is making a master out of money, I can no longer identify with the old man, and money is seen clearly for what it is, a medium of exchange. So there's no fight, flight, freeze response. In this context, she was talking about a flight response, where she says people think by running away from a negative situation, they will be rid of it. But the same situation confronts them again, wherever they go. So an example would be an entrepreneur. They get the ball rolling, they start their business, they run some ad campaigns, they jump on a consulting session, or they work with their team members or their CFO or someone that they explore the numbers with, and they're afraid to have that conversation. They don't want to have that conversation. They run away from it. And they're starting to run out of capital in their business, and they wonder why. If they sat in that conversation, or they delegated over to the CFO without having, the idea to delegate to a CFO or to delegate to someone who takes care of the numbers is also a way clarity can emerge in the silence. So rather than avoiding or neglecting the finance part of their business, it's not neglected. They bring on someone that can help them in that area. They bring on a firm, and maybe the numbers that they see are a few key performance indicator numbers, but they don't neglect them. They're not afraid of looking at these numbers. What happens is they make educated decisions based on these numbers. Based on that optimization data, they know what move to make next. They know where to allocate those resources, and the business grows. So this is one of the things that I've worked with many entrepreneurs with over the years, is dissolving the conditioning surrounding money that is generating the resistance interference patterns. The resistance is generated by conditioning in the mind that belongs to the old man. And by dissolving the old man, just not identifying with those thoughts of the old man, the conditioning goes away as you exist in the silence and you witness life clearly as it is. Perfection emerges. And what does the perfection emerge as? What to say, what to do, what not to do in relation to the money. So that's what I meant by you move in silence. You move in silence. That is what I meant by the difference between people who have a hard time manifesting money and those who do it easily is based on their ability to move in the silence. So now, why would it be hard for an individual to move in the silence? Why would it be hard for the individual to have an unbiased view in relation to money or whatever emerges in their business, whatever it may be? It's because, no shame, no condemnation, identification is there to the old man, which is not real. That is the resistant person. So what happens is, by not identifying with the old man, they're able to move in the silence. And again, as I said, Silence does not mean absence of movement. It is the absence of resistance in this context. And when she says indifference in this context, another way of saying it is do not identify, do not react, let it be undisturbed by a situation. The individual might think, oh, that's hard. It's very hard for me. That's okay. No shame, no condemnation. I recommend watching that video that I released last Sunday. And I also made another video on it on my new channel where I speak exclusively about entrepreneurship in a flow-based way. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it, where I talk about the emotional cycle of change. The emotional cycle of change. I mentioned in there, and actually pull it up on my screen now, I mentioned in there that the emotional cycle of change, or the Kelly and Connor's emotional cycles of change, they articulate what goes on when an individual, what she's talking about, runs away. Why do they run away? Again, identification to conditioning, identification to the old man more specifically, that is identified with the conditioning. So stage one, they say uninformed optimism. So they get an idea. And so related to money, let's start a business. This stage is what is called uninformed optimism. They get excited, and then they may see what's involved with the business. The sales, the marketing, the operations, the finance, the leadership, and they might feel overwhelmed by it. And if they identify with that conditioning, they experience what is called informed pessimism rather than informed optimism. Informed pessimism is essentially seeing all these requirements and then thinking, I can't do this. I have to do this all by myself. All kinds of thoughts that are actually generated by the conditioning. Because the truth is, and I've seen this many times in entrepreneurship, it doesn't mean you have to do all these areas. You may or may not do these areas. Or you can optimize, automate, delegate, or eliminate these areas in some shape or form so that it's not neglected. You don't run away from it. So in this context, we're talking about in relation to money. They might look at some numbers or whatever that's involved and then identify with particular conditioning, and it generates the emotional response of informed pessimism. But meanwhile, that's just meaning assigned to it based on condition. All that stuff is in harmony and in contribution to your vision, including the money, including the numbers, as I had mentioned, examples given. So if they don't identify with it, they'll just go into informed optimism, as in now they know what's required. They'll gather the resources, the relationships, the digital assets, physical assets, intangible assets, relationships will be allocated accordingly, and they will experience success and fulfillment, stage number 5, which is the business grows to that number goal. If they identify with the old man conditioning, what could happen is they go into this valley of despair where it feels very overwhelming. Again, if you want to get into the nuances of this, watch those 2 videos. I'll link in the description to them. And they may then repeat. They'll experience what is called shiny object syndrome. And the cycle may repeat itself again. And maybe they'll get more jaded, let's say, related to money. And they'll think that money is the problem. Every time that this happens, the cycle repeats itself, where they jump on a new initiative or a new money-making idea or a new money-making tactic or strategy. They encounter what is required with it, which doesn't mean they have to do all those things, as I mentioned. Some of the ways is you can optimize, automate, delegate, eliminate. All those things happen by grace and grace alone. They're happening, more accurately put, by grace and grace alone. It's just along the way, the individual is identified with the old man. And if identified with the old man, they experience informed pessimism. And by dissolving the conditioning or not identifying with the old man, they experience informed optimism, and the business grows to success. But if they keep identifying with the old man and they fall into stage 3, the valley of despair, they may think that they have a problem. There's a problem with money. This doesn't work out. Money is the root of all evil. All that kind of illusory thinking. It's confirmation bias that, oh yeah, 1 Timothy 6:10 says money is the root of all evil, which again is confirmation bias. It is not exactly what 1 Timothy 6:10 is saying. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, which is conditioning. So then what can happen if they identify with that conditioning is at a particular point, and I've seen this happen many times in my own life in the earlier stages, and entrepreneurs that I've met along the way, is they'll get involved with another shiny object. Rather than seeing, as I always say, the opportunity that they have now as the spiritual catalyst to dissolve old man identification. So let's say they do dissolve old man identification, which is just simply put, like Neville Goddard says, now let's go into the silence. Now let's go into the silence. It's an interesting way of saying it because you are already that in the silence, beyond all these things. It just appears as an illusion of separation, of not being in the silence through the conditioning in mind. Then it seems like, seemingly, that people are not in harmony with, that the relationships are not in harmony with you. Whatever kind of relationships in entrepreneurship. The vendor relationships, prospect relationships, client relationships, mastermind relationships, etc. The physical assets are not in harmony with you. The digital assets are not in harmony with you. The intangible assets, knowledge, wisdom, expertise that you already have is not in harmony with you. And let's go a little deeper into that. You have everything that you could possibly ever need to make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. You already have it. You have your knowledge, wisdom, reference experience, expertise that you can turn into a fortune. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book on it. It's called The Direct Path to $1 million. Turn what you already have into a fortune based on my own personal experience of doing it. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it. So you already have the knowledge, wisdom, expertise, which is also what I discussed in the video that I released on my other channel on Tuesday. I said, rather than looking for another money-making opportunity tactic, if in the valley of despair, know that it is a pattern generated by the old man who goes around in circles. If identified with the old man, it seems like the individual goes around in circles again and again, repeating the cycle. Shiny object syndrome, see what's involved, react, valley of despair, back to shiny object syndrome. Oh, that's a great opportunity. Let's move forward with that. Same thing happens again and again and again. The way to transcend this programming is to move forward with the initiative anyways. Dissolve the conditioning along the way. Or as we discussed in the other video, work through your emotions. Work through your emotions. So what I did with the entrepreneurs that I've worked with is we would show up to the sessions again and again and again. I don't know if Ruben is watching my video. He might be watching this video. He's one of my clients as well. He spoke about it in the conversation that him and I had. And this is something, and we've been working together for a while. It's just that the way we work together now is different as his business has evolved. And it's evolved considerably. I'll link in the description to the conversation that I had with him. So what we do in the start of our calls is we look at the numbers right away. We look at the numbers. Say, let's look at the numbers. Again, 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 each call. Again, again, and again. And each time we look at it, if there's old man conditioning, we dissolve the conditioning. Just dissolve it. Not identify with the old man. We look at the numbers. We have optimization data there. And from there, we know what to optimize in the marketing, the sales, the allocating of the resources, operations-wise, innovations-wise, finance-wise, leadership-wise. The entrepreneur skill or attributes of ideal entrepreneur is cultivated, absolutely. Or we can say it manifests more so. Their ideal self manifests more so as they no longer identify with the conditioning, as the money in this regard, or the numbers, is seen as a spiritual catalyst. And of course, if you don't run away from the numbers, what happens is you look at the KPIs and say, okay, the idea, the clarity will emerge, may emerge in the conversation that we have, or they'll say it, or I might say it. The optimization point is clear. We'll say, okay, let's increase our ad spend here. Let's run some more angles, which I also talked about positioning and angles in Tuesday's video. If you haven't seen it, again, I recommend watching it. I'll link in the description to it. We cover a lot in the new entrepreneurial channel. We'll get into such vivid detail. I've been an entrepreneur for 16 years, and I worked with thousands of businesses. I built my own business to success from 2000, actually 3. One in IT, one in business consulting, and one through this YouTube channel here. So not only that, I did 10 years in corporate IT. So we can get into all kinds of nuances, and we do that on the other channel. If you're interested in that, I'll link in the description to it. Here, I like focusing more on metaphysics and the mind stuff. That has been the theme since the genesis of this channel, with some entrepreneurial discussions of the components, etc. But we don't run away from them. We don't neglect them, because that would just mean identification with the old man, and you are not the old man. So, undisturbed by situation, undisturbed by appearances, just release the emotions. Don't identify with the thought, and clarity emerges. And then what happens is you get the results. You get the results, and you realize clearly what it means in 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. The person thought they had to do all these kinds of things or run away from it or whatever because they have an inharmonious relationship with the word money or numbers, which is the old man, which is identified with conditioning that distorts reality. Because the old man has made money a god. Because the old man has made money the god. You could say it that way. And they have become the slave to money. Some of the ways that we can see this play out is a person does what they hate to do over and over again for money when they can do what they love to do, which is what Steve Jobs had mentioned in his commencement speech. Do what you love to do. They could do what they love to do and optimize, automate, delegate, eliminate everything else so they could do what they love to do, and the money keeps rolling in. The money keeps compounding. And it can compound to whatever money amount you would like. It doesn't mean you have to make more and more money. And it feels like it's never enough. Again, the person may have then also, if it's not done in a healthy way, if it's not done in a loving way, made money the god, an external god, which is idolatry in the Bible. Of course, it's going to generate all kinds of stress and frustration and conflict and what Neville had said, horrors in the world. But when we know that foundationally God is love, then of course everything appears to be in harmony with you. You are not a slave to money. You're not a slave to anything in this world, actually. You really think for yourself. If you think, you really think for yourself. Everything appears to be in harmony with you. You can only think otherwise. You can only imagine otherwise, or to use Neville Goddard's terms, you can only assume otherwise. But why? It's not real. What is real is you are already that which you desire to be. You are already that which you desire to be. You already have what you desire. I always say, desire points to fulfillment. You are already that. You are completely fulfilled. And as you are also not just completely fulfilled, complete love. As you are complete love, you just pour the love in all things. And as I mentioned, people don't just buy the product and service for the utility value. They also buy it because they experience, sometimes it's referred to as the guru's grace. The guru's grace. It's infused in your products and services. It's infused in everything you do. For example, if you make videos, people can tell that you really love talking about what you're talking about. You're not making videos because you think you have to make videos. You're not building whatever kind of business because you think you have to build this business in order to get money and then you can be happy. Or then you can experience love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, which is again, old man thinking. Because love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment is now and always now. If we think only when I get this money, then I'll experience love or happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, that is idolatry. That is making a god out of money. That is saying that money has power over you. If you think that way, then it generates resistance. How does an individual know they're identified with the old man without shame and condemnation that's generating resistance? Well, how do you look at the numbers? How do you look at money? When you think of money, you start imagining all kinds of ways that it's not in harmony with you. If you look at the numbers on your spreadsheet, etc., are you imagining all kinds of ways that the business is going to fail and it's not going to work out? Or are you imagining all kinds of ways, naturally you imagine all kinds of ways where you optimize? Those insights are given to you by grace and grace alone from God. As fundamentally, God alone exists as love or as fulfillment. That's what I mean by if you think, you really think for yourself. You think from the premise of fulfillment. You think from the premise of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. And you relate to everything harmoniously. More and more so, it appears this way as we no longer identify with the old man. And the way we dissolve the conditioning of the old man and also the old man is if these thoughts appear in mind in relation to money, in relation to anything, actually, you can no longer identify with it. And just witness the power of God, the grace of God. What are some of the ways that the grace of God can appear in your business? Well, the grace of God can appear in your business as clients that are an ideal match show up and they do business with you without resistance. Another way it could show up is business opportunities all of a sudden emerge as you no longer have an inharmonious relationship with the word business or money or entrepreneurship, those opportunities emerge, or career, or whatever way you exchange products and services or whatever it is for compensation. As mentioned, I love that auto-suggestion by Robert Millikan, so much so that it inspired me creating Flow-Based Prosperity built on that foundation. I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. That is the way it is. Of course, that is real man thinking or real self thinking. By entertaining that in your mind, I have a lavish, steady, dependable income consistent with integrity and mutual benefit. It blows away the conditioning. The old man thinking cannot argue with that because that is how you genuinely desire to live. And then what happens is you have a harmonious relationship with people, your harmonious relationship with the various aspects of entrepreneurship, innovation, sales, marketing, operations, finance, leadership, the prospecting, the lead generation, the client acquisition, the ongoing business with existing clients, the physical assets, the digital assets, the intangible assets, and the numbers and the money, etc. And everything appears to be in harmony with you. And then you know exactly what it is that we talk about when we say, and you experience it. And this is not new to you. You have been experiencing it. I put together these videos so that you can experience it more so. You can experience it more so. You experience more flow. Experience being non-resistant and everything just coming to you, just appearing to you. You just attract everything. Everything just shows up. It just appears naturally to you. Of course, it's that way fundamentally because, as I mentioned, the conditions distort reality. They generate the interference patterns, and the individual then appears as a resistant person because of the identification to who is the resistant person, the old man. Now, not only do all of these benefits happen, you also live in peace. Isn't that great? You get to experience that unconditional love everywhere. You see God in all things. You see the harmony in all things. You see the love in all things. Yet you don't make an idol of the thing. That's an interesting nuanced point. Yet you see the harmony in all things. Another way of saying it is you play with all these things, yet you don't form an identity around all these things. You play with all these things rather than forming an identity around all these things. Be in this world, but not of it. And so now to summarize and recap, the difference between people who have a hard time manifesting money, and this is not just because I said so, this is my own personal experience and also working with thousands of people, and those that do manifest it more easily, more flow-based, is their ability to move into the silence if they were about to become identified with the old man, or if they were aware that they became identified with the old man and released the identification. Do not identify with the old man. Then what happens is, of course, they're going to be non-resistant. Non-resistant is your natural way. You're not trying to be non-resistant. Non-resistance is your natural way. It is the natural way. You're just being more as you are. Or as I say sometimes, I just desire to be more as I am. You're just appearing to be more as you are, non-resistant. And as you are appearing to be more non-resistant, what it appears as is the fruits, the results happen more effortlessly, more gracefully, because God does it by grace and grace alone. Soul doership is an illusion. God does it. You release identification to the old man who tries to control, force, and do things to realize that soul doership is an illusion. God does everything by grace and grace alone. Who gave you the vision? Who gave you the desire of your heart? So now it happens by grace and grace alone. And not only does it happen by grace and grace alone, what I found is it happens to be in harmony with people, with relationships, with physical assets, digital assets, intangible assets, the various aspects of entrepreneurship. And you can apply this to whatever kind of context, relationship, areas outside of entrepreneurship, outside of money, whatever. It works the same fundamentally. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, I realize that I am the silent, pure observer of all these things. As I abide as I am, the silent, pure observer of all these things, Everything appears to be in harmony with me. People appear to be in harmony with me. Environments appear to be in harmony with me. Money appears to be in harmony with me. Everything appears to be in harmony with me as I am that harmony, that unconditional love in harmony with all. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk with you soon. Take care.